Welcome to the Me and Money podcast, where your hosts and certified financial planners, Matt Fizell and Elliott Appel, share their thoughts on hot topics, important concepts, and real-life stories in personal finance. Hear from Matt and Elliott as they share lessons learned in their own financial journeys and those they've witnessed throughout their careers while helping clients. Have a question you'd like to hear discussed on a future episode of the podcast? You can reach out to Matt or Elliott or drop your question at the link listed in the show notes. Before we get to the episode, we'd like to remind you that while both Matt and Elliott are financial planners, they are not your financial planner, and this podcast is only intended for educational purposes. For full disclosures, please be sure to listen to the end of the episode or check out the show notes on your favorite podcast platform. Now, on to the show with your hosts, Matt Fizell and Elliott Appel.
Welcome back to another episode of the Me and Money podcast. Elliott, how's it going over there?
I'm fired up for this one.
Yeah, I could tell for those of you listening or watching, when I pitched this topic to Elliott, he had some pretty harsh words at the start, but I think I brought him back a little bit. Brought him back enough to at least talk about it. So we're gonna pivot a little bit from just the normal things we've been talking about, but I think this ties in well to like the liquidity conversation that we had a couple of episodes back. So we're going to talk housing hot takes today because I didn't even read the article. So I want to disclaim that, but I saw a clickbait title that said, if you can't afford the 15-year mortgage payment, you can't afford the house. And
I would also add that the title says self-made millionaire money coach to it.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that at the end. I think that's part of the reason Elliott's fired up, but I want to go back to that title, right? So when I first read it, I'm like, yeah, this is clickbait. Like it's probably going to say you build equity faster or you pay less in interest.
That is what it says.
Yeah. I didn't even have to read it, right? Because we see it all the time. But I sat on it over lunch and I'm just like, like, I don't agree with where this article is probably going, but maybe the headline isn't actually all too wrong. And I just want to paint a picture here. You know, about a half hour ago when I pitched this idea to Elliott, he's like, Matt, this is the stupidest idea ever. It's just a stupid clickbait title. But graciously, after pleading my case for about 5 minutes, Elliott came to his senses and he's like, yeah, I think we could talk about that for a while. So, Elliott, I'm going to give you the floor. Like, why don't you start with your...
I got the next hour, right?
I will gladly bow out and you can just soapbox here for an hour. But why don't we start with like your initial reaction there? Why is it so strong? What didn't you like about it?
Yeah. So initial reaction, Matt is right. I did not like the title at all, but I realize it gets like people click on that. I also use that for YouTube videos and whatnot. But my initial reaction was, well, if you can't afford a 15-year, well, there's plenty of people that can't afford a 15-year mortgage, but are doing just fine on their 30-year mortgage. That's where my mind immediately went. It's like, hey, if all those people are like, hey, I'm not going to buy this house because I can't do the 15-year, how many fewer people would own homes that are doing okay, presumably? So that was where my mind went. I was like, this isn't right. We talked a little bit more about the numbers and we ran a sample here. I'm looking off to my screen for those watching on video of, if you bought, let's say a $600,000 house, you put 20% down, so $120,000. You had a 30-year mortgage, and let's assume rates are around 6.6, give or take. Principal and interest is just a touch over $3,000 for that house. If we run it the other way, so let's say we do a 15-year instead, and let's say 15-year rates are a percentage point lower. So same sample, it's just 15-year term, 5.6 for the interest rate. You're almost at $4,000, just shy under that. And so we're talking about a difference of $1,000 a month. And Matt, you brought me around on this, which I will agree with partially, that if you can't afford that extra $1,000, there might be an issue. And your reasoning was maintenance on the home and other things that just go wrong, which I will 100% agree on because I like to budget somewhere between 1% to 3% of the value of the house for maintenance, depending on how old it is, what's been updated, how much updates you like to make personally, and you know yourself, and whether you're going to do some of those yourself or hire those out depending on the complexity. So a lot of different variables here, but let's say for a $600,000 house, you're going to spend 6 to 12 grand a year on just the maintenance. Again, it's not every single year, but by the time you get a new roof, siding, windows, whatever it is over the lifespan of the house, oftentimes it adds up to that, which then if we're doing 6 grand, that's $500 a month, 12 grand, $1,000 a month. There is our $1,000 a month that we just talked about. And I think that's where a lot of people fail to budget when they do their new home, is they just look at principal interest, property taxes as they stand today, insurance as it stands today, and they don't account necessarily for those last two, property taxes and insurance going up as well. And I think a lot of people have, go scan forums online. People have been surprised by that, both with insurance rates going up and harder to insure areas. And just generally, I mean, I think my premiums went up 15 or 20% for the last 2 years consecutively. And then property taxes, whether that's voter approved, like has happened here, or just property values rising, and that also going up depending on how your county caps that or your state caps that. So I will say I agree somewhat with the premise, but not the necessarily fact that I'm going to go out and get a 15-year mortgage to build equity faster. Because a lot of times I don't want more equity in a house that I can't spend, that's illiquid, that I can't tap very easily. So I'll stop there for a second and see where you want to jump in.
Yeah, no, I would agree with a lot of what you said towards the end there. Like I this is not an episode of me saying I agree that the only way you should go about buying a house is with a 15-year mortgage. Especially like, I think if we were sitting here doing this episode back in 2020, like, I mean, why not lock in that historically low rate for as long as you possibly can and get the most leverage that you possibly could on your cash flow, right? So, but I do think a lot of people, number one, I think it's an underestimation of the cost of a house. So again, when we run those numbers on the you said 1 to 3%. So if it were that 3%, right, that'd be adding like $1,500 a month, like not just the extra 1,000, right? So, I think that's number one. Number two, when we're looking to make a big purchase, and really what I think of a lot of first home buyers that I've worked with in recent history, like it is a big thing, right? It's like a big milestone to have your own house. It's arguably the biggest purchase you're ever going to make, right? I think sometimes like there can be that social pressure to like get it done and kind of justify like, oh, like we live in this little bubble. Like I can go to the, brink of my lending limit here and I can get the house. I'll make that. My job's not going away. I'm not going to get sick or hurt or miss work. My car is not going to break. I just got a new car, right? Like, so I guess when I would agree with you, my first reaction to that headline is, this is clickbait garbage, right? Like, but then when I started to think about it, I'm like, oh, well, in reality, like, I think the lesson isn't all too bad. I don't like the fact that it is just about building equity or saving interest in the house. Not to mention, like, now go buy my $1,300 course that is going to help you save $100,000 when really it's probably just a few simple, back of the envelope math calculations that anyone can do on their favorite website or bank website, right? But yeah, I just think people grossly underestimate like what could go wrong. And I'm not here to sit and say like we should only dwell on the negative possibilities, but I also don't think most people clicking that article are probably the ones who are watching their spending diligently on a month-to-month basis or really have any semblance of a plan, or probably not even an emergency fund, if I'm being honest.
Maybe.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of where I stand. That's where I wanted to, I just thought it'd be a fun conversation. So like,
yeah,
I'll just throw it back to you. Like, where do you want to go from here on this? Like, what do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Like, what do you think the golden nugget is that we could take out of this headline?
I was very skeptical when I read that the first time. So I would want to run some more numbers to see like if rates go up or down in different environments, how does that affect things in terms of the payment? Obviously, with this one example we looked at, it works out okay with that. I would say, and I'll just add this in here. I don't know if it really belongs here, but I like the flexibility of a 30-year payment as opposed to a 15-year. So even if I have the cash to do a 15-year, 9 times out of 10, maybe more than that, I would probably do the 30-year personally, just because life does happen. And if it does, I can always choose to pay off the loan sooner, and you can go do your own calculation. But if you essentially pay like you were on a 15-year on a 30-year note, you're not adding much more than the 15-year, and you're not paying a ton more in interest, but you're gaining a whole heck of a lot of flexibility for when life happens. So I think that's important to mention in these types of articles. And I realize sometimes in articles, you can't say everything possible. I struggle with that in my own writing and videos, and I'm being hypercritical of that. But I think that's just important to keep in mind and not jump to, hey, I'm going to 15-year mortgage. I'm going to build equity as quick as possible. I'm going to reduce the amount I pay in interest, because it ignores everything else that happens in life. Mm-hmm. That's sort of my golden nugget in all of this.
Yeah. I mean, I agree 100%. Like, again, I'm much like you. Like, I think it's a calculation, right? I can make additional payments to my mortgage if I want to, right? I can probably calculate quite easily, like if I did take the 30-year note, like how big does my monthly payment need to be to pay exactly the amount of interest on that 15-year note? Like, so if I'm trying to minimize interest, there's more ways I can go about that rather than giving up the flexibility, like you said.
Yeah.
I'm also, I mean, we just talked about it a couple episodes ago. Like, I was the one who was poo-pooing on, home equity. Like, it's a cool thing to see that you own a $500,000 or $600,000 asset outright with no loan to get it against it. But like, great. Like, what are you going to do with that? Like, I've seen a ton of people retire successfully with going into retirement with mortgages. Like, they all have the same question. Should I pay it off? Like, they have this terrible, and again, I think like I'm the Christian over here, right? Like, probably a little more close to the Dave Ramsey philosophy, even though I don't agree with a lot of what he says. Like, yeah, interest isn't great. Like, you're feeding some mega trillionaire, corporation, right? Like, I'm not saying we should just gleefully pay the bank interest and not think about it, but I also think it's like gotten to the point where it's like evil to have interest. Yeah. And the way I framed it in that liquidity episode is it's just a premium you're paying for flexibility. Like, there's a reason we pay 3 times as much for an airplane ticket that has 2 extra feet of legroom. Like, it's more comfortable. Is that a bad thing with your house? Yeah. Like, I don't think so. Like,
yeah,
I actually could make the argument that you'd probably you could be a better giver, right? If we're looking at from my set of values, like, sure, if you have more monthly cash flow, you can probably more consistently give the amount to whatever cause you want to give to. So like, I'm with you there. Like, I don't really like the shame or like, you shouldn't do this if you can't afford the 15-year payment. But I like the idea of like, you should think about that this is going to cost more than what that mortgage statement costs, because as you and I both know, it does. And it is kind of a gamble. Like, you may walk into a house that only needs 1% of upkeep for the first 5 or 10 years. Like, that's great. But if you take Elliott's side of the coin and you just gave up all your liquidity and your monthly flexibility, and then you have to reside your house, and that costs $30,000 or $40,000, like, that's probably not going to feel so good. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, that's my main takeaway. I don't know if I have any others other than be skeptical of reasoning in articles and explore it a little bit more.
Yeah. If there's a pay link to, to go buy their course, probably a big red flag. But, I mean, I think we could take another approach to it too, right? Like, maybe that 15-year note, like, sure, again, different form of saving, but is that, could you put that extra $1,000 a month towards your retirement instead and achieve the same thing? Like, I think the title of the article still accomplishes like that thought process. Like, I think that's what I like about the title, is it just makes you think like, oh yeah, like it's not going to be just this cost, right? Like, or there's I need to have some buffer, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we could all use more of that buffer in our everyday life as much as possible, as opposed to going to the brink of it.
Yeah. And I think I think a lot of people think about it more with their time, right? And, it's like, would you rather have 15, 30 minutes between everything you had to do in a day, or like frantically getting there with a minute to spare, right? Like, that's kind of how I look at the financial context of this article. Like, you may just be really pushing yourself to feel like, I don't know. I even think about like when we started our firms, right? Like, we were probably over managing or watching our bank accounts like daily because we took a big leap of faith, right? We had expenses, but now that we're more established and we don't have to worry about like, is that check going to bounce? Like, you just have so much more mental energy and bandwidth to do the things you want to do and actually enjoy them, versus like, how am I going to make this work again next month? That can be a really daunting thing to think about.
Yeah. I really like the car analogy, because I think that a lot of people can relate to that. Hey, if I leave 15 minutes early, I don't have to get angry at the driver that's going slowly. I don't have to, worry about this person at the crosswalk or any of those other types of things, because you have plenty of time. Whereas if you're leaving right on time, 15-year mortgage there, maybe that poses some issues at some point. Maybe it doesn't, but there's a good chance it may.
Yeah. And if you have that 30-year mortgage and traffic is clear, like, you can go the speed limit, or you can, I'm not advocating for speeding, right? But theoretically, you could go a little faster if you chose to do so, right? Except in the context of a mortgage, you're not breaking the law. So,
yes.
Yeah. But yeah, anything else you'd want to add on this topic?
No, I think that's great.
I'm glad to see you've relieved a bit of that fire that you had at the beginning of the episode. But I'm curious what people think of this one. Yeah, we'd love to hear your comments, questions. Maybe there's some
if
other.
You're a big proponent of 15-year mortgages, write us. I'd love to hear it. I love when people change my mind. I love hearing different stories.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if I were to take that, right, like, maybe you can make the argument that if you're motivated to do it, you'll do it. I don't know. But like, that's really the only thing I can think of, I guess. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Elliott, for joining, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Me and Money podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Have a question you'd like to suggest for a future episode? Drop Matt or Elliott a question at their email, or use the linked form in the show notes. Like what you heard? It would be a tremendous help to us in our mission of having real conversations about personal finance by leaving us a review on your favorite podcast app. A few words can go a long way in connecting those looking for content like ours on their app of choice. You can also support the show by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thanks again for listening, and be on the lookout for future episodes soon.
The Me and Money podcast is hosted and produced by Harmony Outsourcing Services LLC. Matt Fizell is an investment advisor representative of Harmony Wealth L.L.C. Elliott Appel is an investment advisor representative of Kindness Financial Planning LLC. However, the views and opinions expressed by Matt and Elliott in this podcast are not intended as individualized investment advice on behalf of Harmony or Kindness, or as tax, accounting, or legal advice. Although we gather information from sources that we deem to be reliable, we cannot guarantee the accuracy, timeliness, or completeness of any information prepared by any unaffiliated third party. When specific investments or types of investments are mentioned, such mention is not intended to be a recommendation or endorsement to buy or sell the specific investment. Harmony is a registered investment advisor authorized to do business in the states of Wisconsin and Texas and other jurisdictions where exempted. Kindness is a registered investment advisor authorized to do business in Wisconsin and Washington and in other jurisdictions where exempted. Registration as a registered investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. This website contains links to the Harmony and Kindness websites that provide general information about the advisory services offered by Harmony and Kindness. These links are provided as a convenience only. Harmony and Kindness can only provide individualized services after you sign an agreement and receive required disclosures. Users of this website may, but are not required to, engage the services of Harmony or Kindness for advisory services. Please remember that all investments involve varying degrees of risk, and the future performance of any specific investment or investment strategy is not guaranteed to be profitable or equal to any historical performances. As a final note, we'd encourage you to reach out to your financial professionals before implementing any of the strategies or concepts discussed in this podcast. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.